Yeah, today I'd like to present you our study in which we investigated the effect of emotion regulation on dietary choice. It is widely accepted that emotions can bring about changes in eating behavior. For example, stress, depression, and sadness consistently elicit eating behaviors that fall outside of nutritional recommendations. Negative emotions can elicit unhealthy eating behavior and poor food choices, with food being used to regulate stressful or negative emotions. When one considers the demands of daily life, using unhealthy food to regulate negative emotional states, this may well contribute to a steady increase in weight gain over time. Recent research on the effect of moods on food choices demonstrated that indulgent foods, here shown in white, are rated more positive in a negative mood compared to nutritious food, shown in gray. Furthermore, negative mood cued proximal cues, leading to greater preference for indulgent food over healthy foods. Thus, the experience of incidental negative emotions in everyday life seems to be associated with greater consideration of proximal goals and a greater desire for immediate gratification, leading to the consumption of indulgent foods, but this also comes with undesirable long-time consequences. So the question here is, what mechanisms could counteract this unwanted process? It has been shown that directing attention to the health aspects of foods improves dietary choices. For example, people made healthier choices in the presence of health cues, which led to the updating of stimulus value signals. And these stimulus value signals were encoded in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. These findings demonstrate that the unwanted impact of negative emotions could potentially be decreased by focusing attention on health aspects of the foods. And this could therefore result in healthy food choices and more desirable long-term consequences. Another way to counteract the impact of incidental negative emotions on food decisions could be the deliberate use of emotion regulation strategies. Emotion regulation could directly impact the starting point of the decision-making process. Therefore, we hypothesized that the downregulation of negative emotions would be associated with more healthy food decisions. We tested the effect of emotion regulation on subsequent food choices in the present study. First, we selected only food items that scored high on valence, familiarity, and recognizability. 70 high-caloric and 70 low-caloric images were chosen that were matched for several features: for arousal, recognizability, palatability, complexity, craving, and several image characteristics. Next, participants rated all selected items on recognizability, taste, and healthiness. Based on these ratings, we only included participants that were able to recognize all food items. Inside the scanner, we incorporated a standard emotion regulation task with 2 conditions, followed by a food choice task, using an event-related design. During the look condition, participants were presented with negative images and asked to simply experience their emotions without trying to regulate them. During the decrease conditions, they were asked to reduce the intensity of the negative emotions by using reappraisal. In each trial, this was followed by the food choice task. Here, people were shown food items and rated their desire for eating this food item after the experiment. The preference scale here ranged from a very strong no to a very strong yes. And finally, the trial concluded by an emotional state rating, where participants rated their emotional state either very positive or very negative or neutral. And at the end of the experiment, a random trial was chosen, and the participants could consume the actual food. After the experiments, participants filled out a set of questionnaires on emotional regulation ability and eating attitudes and behavior. Firstly, we assessed people's subjective health rating ranging from very unhealthy to very healthy. And high-caloric food items were rated as more unhealthy, here shown in green on the left side, while low-caloric foods were rated as more healthy, shown on the right side. Secondly, we found a negative correlation between calories, shown on the y-axis, and subjective health ratings, shown on the x-axis, indicating that healthy food items were associated with low calories. This also confirms a very close association between subjectively perceived and objective health qualities of the food. To test whether emotion regulation was implemented successfully by the participants, we analyzed emotional state ratings, assessed on each trial. The y-axis here indicates the mean emotional state ratings, so whether participants felt negative or positive. On average, participants reported to feel less negative during the downregulation of emotions compared to the control condition where they were asked not to regulate their emotions. This indicates that the participants successfully implemented their emotion regulation strategies. Next, we analyzed the choice behavior during the decision-making phase. The figure here shows the percent of choices to consume the depicted food item after the experiment. We found that participants wanted to consume items more often after downregulating their emotions, here shown in blue, compared to the control condition shown in gray. Next, we integrated the individual pre-experimental online health ratings into our analysis. And again, this figure shows the percent of choices to consume the depicted food item after the experiment. Interestingly, we found that participants also preferred the healthy foods more often after emotion regulation compared to the control condition. In the first step of the fMRI analysis, we checked whether emotion regulation had an effect on prefrontal cortex regions. Thus, we contrasted the downregulation of emotions with the condition in which emotions were not regulated. This analysis revealed increased activity in the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, parietal cortex, and the SMA. The observed regions are part of the well-described emotion regulation network, which we recently described in our meta-analysis. We further discuss the cognitive and affective networks implicated in emotion regulation on our poster with the number 1490. In the next step, we analyzed the decision phase of the experiment. Therefore, we first contrasted the yes and the no choices with each other. And this resulted in increased activity in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, as well as the striatum, for yes choices compared to no choices. And all these regions have been described previously and implicated into value-based decision-making. Finally, we looked for an overlap in regions in which activation profiles showed a parametric modulation by preferences and health ratings during decision-making, therefore constituting a hub for processing decision strengths and healthiness. Two regions were found to show such a profile, namely the ventromedial prefrontal cortex and the striatum. Based on this finding, we then tested whether the activity in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex was further modulated by emotion regulation. Indeed, we found that the activity within the vmPFC during food decisions was decreased after participants experienced negative emotions without regulating them, compared to the emotion regulation condition. This shows that this shared network component for processing preference and health was also systematically modulated by emotion regulation. This supports the idea that emotion regulation might neutralize the effect of negative emotions on ventromedial prefrontal cortex activity. In line with previous findings, we found that vmPFC seems to play a central role in integrating health and preference information into a value signal. We further extend these findings by showing that emotion regulation modulates the activity in the vmPFC during food choices. The next big challenge will be to test whether the observed activation patterns in the vmPFC directly reflect the interaction of emotion regulation with the process of integrating health information and preference judgments. And with this, I'd like to end and thank my coworkers, and I'd like to see you at my poster tomorrow or Tuesday or Wednesday.